I will focus my presentation on job and career opportunities in the pharmaceutical industry. And basically, it will be on three possibilities: clinical research, pharmacovigilance, and regulatory affairs. The core will be on clinical development, pharmacovigilance, and regulatory affairs. I will do some introductory remarks and then have a final conclusion. As an introduction, I will speak a little bit about the diversity in the pharmaceutical industry, about the drug life cycle and where clinical research, pharmacovigilance, and regulatory affairs fits in, the diversity of organizations, titles, etc. within the pharmaceutical industry, the required qualifications, and then finally, I can't see it here, on the required profiles of people that are wanted in the pharmaceutical industry in these three areas. The pharmaceutical industry is an umbrella term. It includes a lot of different companies or styles of companies. You have big pharma, as we call it, the big pharmaceutical companies, the top 20 world active pharmaceutical companies, names that you probably all know. There's a lot of biotech companies now that come up that specialize in biopharmaceuticals, not in small molecules, but in large molecules. Some companies do both, the classic small molecules and the newer large molecules, but some are specialized in biotech products, so it's up to you where you want to land, where you want to get it. Big pharma, biotech companies, small and medium-sized enterprises, a lot of them out there, some in niche indications. Some are specialized in diabetes, for instance, neuropharmacology. Again, a diversity. A lot of startups and spin-offs for the moment. Either in the very early stages of drug discovery, but also in the field that I am going to talk about. And then finally, contract research organizations. Especially in the field of clinical development, regulatory affairs, and pharmacovigilance, you see a lot of contract research organizations, service providers that work for pharmaceutical companies, and there are a lot of job opportunities out there also. So that is already something that you have to take account of. The pharmaceutical industry is an umbrella term. It covers a lot of different types of organizations. In the drug life cycle, the first and the second part of it, drug discovery and design, and then non-clinical development, are laboratory activities, essentially. You end up in a lab when you get for a job out there, in drug discovery or in the non-clinical development. The non-clinical development covers everything what is done not in humans, what is done in animals and in vitro, in development. That is pharmacokinetics, toxicology, formulation, drug analysis. These are the main non-clinical development activities of the drug life cycle. So again, when you want to work in the pharmaceutical industry in a lab, these are the opportunities. I'm not going to talk about that. The next part of the drug life cycle is the clinical development. It's somewhat broader than clinical research. The topic is clinical research in the title, but I'm going to broaden it a little bit to clinical development. Clinical development is what is happening in man. It's usually phased in different phases. Classic is phase 1, 2, 3, 4. Nowadays, there's also a lot of early exploratory clinical development, sometimes called phase 0, microdose, or exploratory clinical trials. The early clinical phase, phase 1 and phase 2A, phase 1 including also the first in human studies, first in man studies, sometimes also, the very first study in man, and the early studies in patients, phase 2A. Then the late pre-marketing authorization clinical phase with 2B, where larger trials are done and the dose range is already known. And then phase 3, where the drug is compared to existing therapy. This is all pre-marketing authorization. Then you have the marketing authorization in the drug life cycle, and there regulatory affairs plays an important role. Then post-marketing authorization, the drug development continues. And you see a lot of pharmacovigilance there. Pharmacovigilance, the term, was first restricted to post-marketing surveillance of drugs. Pharmacovigilance is the study of side effects of drugs, adverse drug reactions. It's mainly done, the term pharmacovigilance, in humans. First, a number of years ago, it was limited to post-marketing surveillance, but today it's broader than that. I will come back to it. But it situates itself in the drug life cycle in clinical development. Pharmacovigilance is in fact part of clinical development. And then you have the commercialization phase of the drug life cycle. Commercialization when the drug is on the market and the development, the clinical development continues. Phase 4 studies, new indications and new formulations. And hopefully, commercialization phase will be the longest in the life cycle of the drug. To go to marketing authorization takes 5 to 10 years, sometimes more, depending on the indication. And then, hopefully, the commercial phase will be longer. In the commercial phase, I'm not going to talk about commercial functions within the pharmaceutical industry, but you have what is called market access. Having a marketing authorization is not enough to be able to get your drug sold in the market. The marketing authorization is based on the 3 criteria: quality, efficacy and safety. Market access is based on an extra criteria, which is value. Value for money. And market access includes price setting and reimbursement by Social Security. That is the first activity of commercialization, and sometimes in the pharmaceutical industry this is done also by people in regulatory affairs. Sometimes you have a separate unit, market access unit, which combines a number of different people. Clinical development people, commercial people, regulatory affairs people, patent lawyers, etc. And then afterwards, of course, you have the real commercialization phase, where you need people in marketing and sales. I didn't talk about a third possibility in the drug's life cycle for pharmacy and other students or graduates. That is the production side of it. When you are in the production side, of course, you mostly end up in a factory, in a plant. Be it for the production of the active pharmaceutical ingredient, or be it for the production of the end product, the formulation. So, there are three possibilities to end up somewhere in the pharmaceutical industry, in the drug life cycle: in a lab, in an office, and these are the functions that I'm going to talk about, or in a plant. The organizations themselves are very, very different from company to company. So when you see a job title, read the job content or the job specifications carefully, because the same title can be used by different organizations in a different way. There are common characteristics, but be careful, organizations differ a lot from company to company. Mostly the three activities that I'm going to talk about, clinical development, pharmacovigilance and regulatory affairs, are within R&D, the R&D department, research and development department. And the other departments being commercial operations, being human resources, being the production, being finance and things like that in a company. Okay? The qualifications, the initial qualifications that are most wanted in these three disciplines, clinical development, regulatory affairs and pharmacovigilance, are three different kinds. We do accept, or the pharmaceutical industry does accept, graduates, masters, without further experience, knowing that for a number of jobs out there in the pharmaceutical industry, there is no specific education available, ready from the university. Pharmaceutical industry knows that and knows how to live with it today. There's a lot of training in-house going on for graduates. So it is a possibility for graduates to enter the pharmaceutical industry without further experience. Of course, when you have some experience, like already mentioned, abroad, for instance, during your master thesis already, well, that can help, of course. And for some jobs, experience will be required. But then, that is a career opportunity to move from one company to another, and also a career opportunity is to move from one discipline to another. It is easier, for instance, to move from clinical development to regulatory affairs, and then to commercial functions, than the reverse. Once you've been in a commercial function, entered in a commercial function, as a product manager, for instance, it's more difficult to come back to clinical development, for instance. The types of graduates in the three disciplines that I'm talking about are pharmacy students, or graduates I mean, what is called biomedical sciences in a number of countries, in our country, Belgium, and the Netherlands, Scandinavia, Great Britain, biomedical sciences today, biotechnology, human biology, chemistry, these life sciences as they are called, and of course medicine. In the disciplines that I'm talking about, veterinary surgeons are not that much wanted, but of course, in non-clinical development, they are a really wanted qualification also. The second possibility is that you do further specialization, that you become an expert in something. Not only to be an expert in something and then to have perhaps a better opportunity to enter the pharmaceutical industry, but the experience that you gained by doing the extra diploma or whatever is perhaps an experience that can be of value within the pharmaceutical industry. Further specializations that are wanted in the jobs that I'm going to describe is of course a PhD, hospital pharmacy or clinical pharmacy, because we're talking about disciplines treating human experimentation, and then postgraduates. The classic postgraduate is a pharmaceutical medicine postgraduate, but there are many others out there, and I will mention a few others. And then the third possibility is going for an extra degree besides your first degree. And the extra degrees is, for instance, business administration, master in business administration, and MBA, or something that sounds completely different but can be very complementary is law or economics. That will end up people that are wanted today also health economics specialists or specialists in pharmacoeconomics. As I was saying, market access today is extremely important. It's becoming even more important than just having a marketing authorization. Pharmacoeconomics, value for money, is becoming extremely important, and so there is a need for pharmacoeconomics or health economists in the pharmaceutical industry. Lawyers the same, patent law, IP, intellectual property, but also people who have extra law diplomas in European law, for instance, for regulatory affairs. So either graduates, specialization, or a second diploma. A few things about the required profiles, but they are not specific for the pharmaceutical industry, of course. But these are extras that are really important because, as I mentioned at the end, there's a lot of competition for jobs in the pharmaceutical industry. And we call it a war for talent. You look for talented people, and especially as they are called in the pharmaceutical industry, but also in other disciplines or economic activities, high potentials, high posts. People who have more than just their scientific background, who have extras. And the extras are, of course, in this discipline, interest in medicines, capacity to work in a team, a creative, innovative mindset. Because I forgot to tell, one of the other umbrella things within the pharmaceutical industry is that you can choose for an innovative company, or you can go for a generic company, or companies today that do biosimilars. Organization talent, because the development of drugs is extremely complex. A good sense of communication, willing to learn lifelong, and most of all probably linguistic skills. English for an international career in the pharmaceutical development is a must, and even knowledge of a couple of other languages is highly appreciated whenever they send you in an international mobility program to different other countries. So now I come to the core. The first part is on clinical development, a bit broader than clinical research. What is it about? Typical jobs, and are there special requirements? Clinical development. It includes clinical research, but it's more than that. Clinical research is people who think about the clinical development plan of a drug, of a new drug. What should be done? In what sequence? The first in-man study, and then the different phases. They think about the strategy. They are mostly active in headquarters. Second part is what is called clinical operations. These are the people that coordinate the conduct of the clinical trials in the different centers, all over the world sometimes. Of course, the first in-man study is done in one carefully selected center, somewhere. But then you need multi-center trials, multinational trials. That is all coordinated by clinical operations. A lot of different job opportunities there. Not only at the headquarters, there are people that coordinated on an international level, but some are just responsible for one country. In Italy, for instance, clinical operations in Italy, coordinating the conduct of clinical studies with the new drugs of your company in Italy. Medical review, you need specialists, mostly medical doctors, that do the medical review of the data collected. And pharmacovigilance experts, experts in adverse drug effects. I will come back to that. You need experts in clinical trial methodology and statistics. In the beginning, in the design of the study, in writing the statistical analysis plan, and then doing the analysis at the end. People that do the report writing also. You need people that do data management. It's a special discipline. The millions and millions of data, the big databases, and careful analysis of the data also. Not only interesting to put things in a computer, but it's more interesting to get information out of it and knowledge out of it. Data managers are the people who do that. And then a number of functions under the umbrella of clinical support. The clinical supplies, for instance. The other instruments and whatever is needed to run a clinical trial. Quality management people, especially in this area based on good clinical practices, good clinical research practices. All the quality management people, SOP writing, auditing. This is a special discipline. If you like to become an expert in that, a lot of possibilities in clinical development. And then finally, project management, because the whole development of a drug, the whole research and development of a drug is project management. And so this is, you need sometimes people who just do that, do the planning and the project management of one drug or different drugs. Or some do portfolio management. A lot of pharmacists end up in these job functions. So this is clinical development, broader than just clinical research. What are the job opportunities there? Project managers that coordinate these activities within their discipline. Sometimes international project managers, when it is an international activity. Clinical research associates or monitors, people who go out to the centers or do central monitoring of the study once it is running, but also they are implicated in the preparation of the study, the running of the study, the contact with the centers. Can be on a national level, just traveling around to all the different centers in Italy, or can be an international job. Going to several regions or some regions, or go to different countries. CRAs or monitors. Data managers, people who are doing all the data management activities and running all the queries to get the database clean before transferring the database to the biostatistician, for statistical analysis. Medical reviews, as I said, mostly medical doctors, biostatisticians, quality assurance people, special word on the auditors, quality assurance auditors, people that go out to the centers or do systems audits. That's a cross-sectional photo of an organization, how they are working, how they are doing in a center. Do they comply with the regulations? Do they comply with their standard operating procedures? Do they do everything up to the quality standards? Mostly 2, 3 to 4 days somewhere in the center or within an organization. The same activity is also done by inspectors, from agencies. This is also a job opportunity for pharmacists, to go and work in an agency. And an inspector is doing audits from an agency. They are called inspections, but it's the same activity. And then, finally, yeah, you need a number of managers, of course. Directors, people who can manage a group of other people. And that is a career opportunity within data management, clinical operations, clinical research, and sometimes you can switch from one thing to another within clinical development. What are the extra educations which are required or which are wanted? A PhD, of course, in a clinical research field. That is certainly helpful. And then postgraduate educations, there are a lot out there. Perhaps not all available in Italy, but then there are a number are available in other countries. Or some are today available online. One of the IMI programs, the Innovative Medicines Initiative, is called Pharma Train. Training in jobs for the pharmaceutical industry. And there you can find a lot of information also on these different. There are extra postgraduates in pharmaceutical medicine, a very different number out there. In drug development sciences, as they are called, all these different disciplines in drug development. And in Italy I understood that there is one for CRAs, because in Italy CRAs have to be certified. And that you can get a postgraduate or a master in this to get a certification as a CRA. In quality management, in health economics or pharmacoeconomics, in epidemiology or pharmacoepidemiology, also very important, because especially in the late phase clinical development, post-marketing authorization, there's another criterion coming up. We've talked pre-marketing authorization about quality, efficacy and safety. Efficacy is what is demonstrated within the context of clinical trials. Highly selected patients. Highly selected for their disease, but especially for the absence of other diseases. That's not the real world. What you then have to demonstrate is what is called effectiveness. The efficacy in real clinical practice with patients who have comorbidities, who take other drugs that were excluded in the clinical trials. That's something else, effectiveness research. And there you need epidemiological approaches. It's more observational research. A good knowledge of clinical epidemiology is interesting. Or pharmacoepidemiology. There are postgraduates out there. And then of course, not everything can be learned outside. A number of things can be learned in or on the job, in-house. Pharmacovigilance, what is it about exactly? A few typical jobs and special requirements. It's a science, pharmacovigilance. It's one of the pharmacological sciences today, related to adverse drug effects. Before, as I was saying, it was limited to post-marketing surveillance. Today we talk about pharmacovigilance, post-marketing and pre-marketing. But it is in humans. When we talk about drug safety, it's broader than that. Drug safety includes pharmacovigilance and the non-clinical toxicology. Broader. This is limited to what is done in humans. Of course, I am talking about human medicines, but you have the equivalent, of course, of clinical development in animal drugs. They also have a clinical development in animals. But here we're talking about human medicines and pharmacovigilance in humans. They do all the handling of adverse drug reaction. It's an expertise. especially what is called expedited reporting. When an adverse drug reaction happens, a case, it has to be transferred and reported to authorities, to ethics committees and things like that, according to a number of rules. And we do also regular, periodic safety updates, reports. The jobs, you have local drug safety officers, people who are in a country responsible for the follow-up, the handling of cases of pharmacovigilance, spontaneous notifications, other programs of pharmacovigilance, studies in a country. You have people in the headquarters who do that in an international level, sometimes organized in a region like Europe, or finally someone who is responsible for the whole world, and the pharmacovigilance and the drug safety, including toxicology, for the drug overall global. In Europe you have in the regulation a special person. It's called the Qualified Person for Pharmacovigilance, the QPPV. Only one per company, but every company has to have one. And then of course you have a department head. The extras, of course you see more medical doctors there. It's a very clinical oriented discipline. You can do postgraduates in pharmacovigilance. You see pharmacy students there. Rarely someone else, but medical doctors and pharmacy students. There's a lot of administration, reporting to be done, and there are a lot of pharmacists in pharmacovigilance. An education in some legal discipline like European legal studies is an extra, for sure. And again, you can learn a lot on the job. A lot of people who work currently in pharmacovigilance have been trained on the job. And finally, something about regulatory affairs. What is it? These people ensure the compliance of everything what's going on, all the processes with drug legislation and regulation. Legislations are musts, regulations are recommendations. They interact with the regulatory authorities, different countries, regional, European, worldwide, whatever. They are mostly responsible for two things. Before starting a clinical trial, you need a clinical trial authorization. There's dossiers to be completed and applications to be made to the competent authorities and to ethics committees before the start. And then they do all the applications and follow-up also of marketing authorizations. The jobs, you have project managers and officers. This is a general term of people that are not yet project manager, but are assistant project managers, other types of things. The titles may differ, but they all work in regulatory affairs. You need a lot of people for all this reporting to be done within the timelines and all these reports to be written. Now, national, regional, as I was saying, Asia, Europe or whatever, or worldwide. And of course you need a manager also. The extras, postgraduate education in drug regulatory affairs, also available in Italy, I understood, but everywhere. Traineeship in a medicines agency. A first experience in a medicines agency is of course an asset to be hired in the pharmaceutical industry. And then have special extra degrees, as I was saying, in economics or in law. As a conclusion, the pharmaceutical industry can offer you a number of things, that's for sure. A wide variety of different jobs and different opportunities, even just within these three disciplines that I was talking about: clinical development, regulatory affairs and pharmacovigilance. They have good career opportunities. You can enter as a graduate and work your way up for several years. Good international possibilities, that's for sure. And you have a fair remuneration package or a fair compensation package. That's for sure an asset of the pharmaceutical industry and what they can offer you. But you need also to bring something to them, and of course you need to demonstrate flexibility, because you can be asked to do something else. You can, if you want promotion, if you want a career development, you have to be flexible. You have to be flexible to move also, and that's again international mobility at the end there. And then some of the aspects that are not specific for the pharmaceutical industry but are well appreciated is personal skills, the extras that you bring on top of your scientific experience or competences, and of course the linguistic and multicultural skills that you have. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Thomas, for this very nice and clear overview of all the different positions available. So this, we want you to start with this thing, because maybe there are some questions. Because we want you to give you again an overview to show you how many opportunities are there, beyond research. So again, to start with a very good research activity could be really excellent, but then don't feel discouraged if maybe things do not go well in research. There are many other very interesting jobs. If there is any question, yes, Annette?
Yeah, I have a question because in research we have mainly the problem that most of the positions you can offer are part-time, so only for a few years or for the duration of the project. How is it in pharmacology industry? Do you have many permanent positions, or is it also this part-time?
Yes, I think most of the positions are permanent. You might in the beginning start with a position for 1 or 2 years, yeah. But we need, I'm not in the pharmaceutical industry anymore now, but they need permanent positions. And there's, it is all the time that you see offers. Of course it's crisis now, or coming out of a crisis. And maybe there are some less offers than 10 years ago. But it is still an industry that is vibrant, especially the innovative industry, but also in these generic and biosimilar industries. There is a lot of booming activity, and mostly it's for permanent positions. Also because they know that they cannot hire people that can immediately do what they are expected to do. They have to train them. They have to invest in these people. And that's why it's also so important that you have extra skills. You will only be picked because the industry has to invest in you extra for a number of years. You will only be picked if you have extra competencies or extra skills.
I'm just a witness. Because I'm one of the first PhD with Professor Silvestrini, when Luciano before was there and was in US in that period. And I'm one of the first of the group of Professor Silvestrini to belong to the company. I'm now in Novartis and I'm the head of institutional affairs role, but as a previous research, I started in regulatory affairs, just to give an example to our younger colleague, and then medical department, and then marketing and sales, starting from supervision, which was a little group, and then in the Novartis Pharma. So I'm very happy to see that now there is a sort of procedure more established, because at the beginning it was easier. It's right. For one was a good scholarship work, but on the other end, everything was on the support of Professor Silvestrini and us in fighting. Now that I'm in Novartis, I'm in Novartis Italy, but I have the possibility to be abroad too, and we have lots of young people who come. It's clear that at the beginning, especially local company, because at the international level is different, we have just to sign 4 to 6 months, 1 year contract, but again, it depends on people. on the possibility on people, because we have some young people who really stay.
Yeah,
This
thank
is
you,
just
thank
one.
you, Anna. Other questions?
What is also interesting to mention is perhaps that one of the entry possibilities is to start in a CRO. And then you get experience in different companies, because you're outsourced to a company for half a year, for a year, or maybe a bit more. Then you can do that in another company, and you see different ways of working. And also, once you do well in one of these companies, they might hire you for a permanent position. That's also an interesting entry in the pharmaceutical industry, via a CRO.
Other questions? Yes?
In your opinion, why only Italy needs a certificate to be a CRA? Because
If you can present yourself also, it's better to, can you tell your name and...
Chiara, sorry, I'm Chiara, and I want to know why only in Italy it needs a certificate to be a CRA?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I was told by a colleague of mine that in Italy there is this certification. But I must say that for a lot of jobs in the pharmaceutical industry, and also for investigators, this training might become obligatory, mandatory. So certification is certainly a good thing, and is also something that might be organized in the future within Europe or internationally. And if you did put the energy into it, it gives you an extra asset, even in other countries probably. But nowadays in PharmaTrain, there is a certification of investigators. They are asking for certifications of members of ethics committees. They are asking for certifications of people that are in pharmacovigilance. It will become probably something that will be needed everywhere. So Italy must have been a pioneer in it.
Because I received a lot of emails about crime missions, being a CRA, and I thought, it's true, is a good thing, or is only a way to have money, stuff like that. Sorry for my question.
Well, it is a way to get the quality higher.
Maybe, yeah.
And education is an important thing, because in academia you do not really find it in the primary master qualifications or master programs.
Other questions? Actually, there is a question from a person that is online, Annalisa Panzioni. How is it?
She's a Leonardo trainee.
Leonardo
now.
trainee, so
we
we are happy that she sent us an email. She would like to know how a pharmacist could apply for the position of a health inspector. If you know anything about this position, the health inspector, I don't know if she means in the public body or
No,
sure.
the inspector, the name inspector is for competent authorities. As I was saying, in quality, you have quality assurance. These are people that look at the compliance of what has been done before, during the process. These are auditors or inspectors. An auditor is someone either from within the company, but who is not implicated in the operations himself. He has not been doing the study himself. He has not been implicated in pharmacovigilance or drug supplies or something other that he is going to audit. But he can be in-house. Most of the pharmaceutical companies have an auditing cell within the company for the different good manufacturing procedures, good laboratory procedures, good clinical procedures. The same type of activity is done by inspectors, by health inspectors, by agency inspectors, the same type of activity on good manufacturing practices, on good laboratory practices, on good clinical practices. The qualifications that you need, they are mostly pharmacists. And if you can do an extra postgraduate in quality management, that is for sure the best thing that you can do. Or at least follow some courses on good clinical practices if you want the clinical field, or on good laboratory. This is the minimum that you have to know. You have to know the legislation and you have to know the regulations. I'm not a specialist on the Italian health authority, but I mean that will be the qualifications that you need.
Thank you very much. Also, thank you very much for mentioning all the transferable skills. You know, that's you said, of course, international mobility can be very important to develop even further. You know, creativity, capacity to work in a team. You know, this innovative mindset that you mentioned. So I think this is the direction we're trying to go into. I mean, to try to help the young people to develop transferable skills. And also, you mentioned an interesting part that is related to the traineeships. For instance, at the European Medicine Agency in London, there are opportunities there for young people. So on the unipharma.it website, actually, we put this information to inform young people that it's a good idea to try to apply for traineeships there, because of course, traineeships of 6 months in London at the European Medicines Agency could be very useful for people who want to go into clinical development. And
some companies also offer traineeships themselves. And if you can get a traineeship within a pharmaceutical company for 6 months, that is also of interest, of course. I don't know whether this is already the case in Italy, but for instance in Belgium we have 2 types of masters, pharmaceutical sciences. One that's going for the community pharmacy and hospital pharmacy, and another one to the industry. You have different, and the first one does 6 months in a hospital or in a community pharmacy, and the other one does 6 months in the pharmaceutical industry. That's of course also a good entry point to get to know the pharmaceutical industry.
This happens actually in the masters. When you do the master in clinical development in Italy, then 6 months usually is dedicated to a stuff. So thank you very much again. So I ask Benelux to try to catch up a little bit. Now it's a pleasure to introduce Dr. Roxana Selmenicht.